Well, good morning and welcome to BBRC Britain and English. Well, thank you very much for joining me today here on this reasonably overcast morning here. But the clocks have changed, so we're now in GMT, not British Summer Time, back to Greenwich Mean Time. The clocks went back by an hour last Sunday morning. Now, today I'd like to talk to you about Guy Fawkes Night. Well, it's the 5th of November, and as promised last week, I will talk to you a little bit about the meaning and origins of Guy Fawkes Night. Now, there's a number of different displays in this country you'll find around this sort of time. It's a Friday night. It will happen on Friday today and Saturday as well tomorrow, especially if it's close to a weekend. And there's organised displays, and they're far safer, and they're usually recommended to take children to those rather than certain displays in people's gardens where sometimes children get a bit close. But of course, some people use sparklers and things, and there's lots of different events on all throughout the country. And the only other place you might times you might have fireworks are New Year's Eve. Certainly in London, there's a big display. So if you'd like to actually be in London at that time, but do make sure you do buy yourself a ticket because it does get very busy. So that's London Central fireworks display on New Year's Eve. So that's 31st of December. I've done a bit of research on all this to check up on some of the facts with it all, because I mean I was taught this at school. I've often been to fireworks displays as a child and some family displays and things over the years. But certainly the commemorations do go back to 1605, the Gunpowder Plot, where Guy Fawkes, who was actually from York originally, tried to blow up the House of Parliament, or in fact he tried to blow up the House of Lords. Certainly, luckily, he failed. But certainly in terms of commemoration, we've been following this and commemorating this since a few months after that time. Well, as I say, the history and origins go back to 1605, where Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the House of Lords, part of the House of Parliament, to kill King James I. And within a few months, the Guy Fawkes Night, as it later became, started to be observed in the country and continues to this day. And there was a lot of, I should say, anti-Catholic sentiment at the time, which went on till about the 1850s. And I should say, the actual occasion, Guy Fawkes Night, was actually observed in other countries as well, including in America until about the American Revolution. Well, I've got some keynotes here, and I quote from a website here. In fact, it's the Telegraph. Some of the facts perhaps unknown about Guy Fawkes. Now, there is an old wives' tale that he actually was hung, drawn and quartered, and the parts of his body placed around London on various gantry and signage and lamps, whatever else you want to call it, of the day. So everybody could see it, in other words, but this apparently was not the case. He wasn't hung, drawn and quartered, despite his role in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605, where he tried to kill King James and as many members of Parliament as possible at the time. It was not his fate. As he awaited his grisly punishment on the gallows, Fawkes leapt to his death to avoid the horrors of having his testicles cut off, his stomach opened, and his guts spilled out before his eyes. He died from a broken neck. So there we are, a grisly end there. And apologies if it's a bit too detailed and graphic there. But those were the times when if you tried to do a thing like that to the King or Queen or any members of Parliament, this is what you had happen to you. Perhaps very different to these days, where there's a lot more mercy in society. But his body was subsequently quartered, and his remains were sent to the four corners of the kingdom as a warning to others. Guy Fawkes was not the Gunpowder Plot ringleader. There were 13 conspirators in the plot, which was masterminded by Robert Catesby. Catesby was a charismatic Catholic who had a reputation for speaking out against the English crown. Most of these, of course, were Republican, didn't believe in the monarchy at all of the day. But of course, it was run very differently back then, so it's very difficult to compare the times with nowadays, of course. It was Guy Fawkes who gained notoriety after the plot was foiled, as he had the perilous duty of sneaking into the cellar beneath the House of Lords and igniting the explosives. It was he who was caught red-handed with 36 barrels of gunpowder. And for 2 days, Fawkes was the only conspirator who the king's men had captured. But, having said that, another point, perhaps not known, Guy Fawkes won the unlikely admiration of King James I. When asked why he had so much gunpowder, he replied that his intention was to blow you Scotch beggars back to your native mountains. Well, so he didn't like the Scots either. Although having said that, he was from up north. He was from York. That's a place many of you may like to visit in Yorkshire, the city of York. Of course, all this went on in London, the capital. Fawkes expressed regret having failed to blow up the House of Lords. Unusually, his steadfast manner earned him the praise of King James, who described Fawkes as possessing a Roman resolution. Guy Fawkes was actually Protestant by birth. Certainly his father was a proud Protestant, became Catholic later. His grandparents were Catholics, and he also refused to attend Protestant services. In 1578, Guy Fawkes was 8. His father died and his widowed mother married Catholic, Dionysus Banbrigg. Fawkes converted to Catholicism when he was a teenager. There we are, certainly shaped his life in certain ways. Guy Fawkes has an island named after him. There we are. He is one of Britain's most infamous villains, whose effigy has been burned and whose demise has been publicly celebrated for more than 4 centuries. It may come as a surprise, then, that there is an island named after Guy Fawkes. To the northwest of Santa Cruz Island in the Galapagos Islands, a collection of 2 uninhabited crescent-shaped islands is named Isla Guy Fawkes, or Guy Fawkes Island. Aged 21 and a committed Catholic, Fawkes sold his estate. His father had left him and went to Europe to fight for Catholic Spain, there we are, against the Protestant Dutch Republic in the 8 Years' War. The Houses of Parliament are still searched once a year for conspirators. Before the state opening of Parliament, the yeomen and the guards search the Houses of Parliament and lanterns to make sure there are no would-be conspirators hiding in the cellars. Of course, anybody who know it will know it's a very old building, and in fact, doesn't need a lot of work doing on it, so there's probably even more walls down and certainly masonry falling around than there was a couple of years ago. But certainly it's been an ongoing problem for about the last 10 years, and they really are going to have to close it at some point to do it up, which is going to take good probably 15, 20 years, because it's an old building and it costs a lot of money. And all the electrics and everything will have to be done. There's various leaks in places there, but certainly they do still check through and to make sure that there's no stowaways there or anything else. But right up to modern day Britain. Well, the cellar that Fawkes tried to blow up no longer exists. It was destroyed in a fire in 1834 that just devastated the medieval Houses of Parliament. So, of course, as you probably know, a lot of fires happened years ago before there was a modern fire service. And, of course, they were totally destroyed and rebuilt again in another way, in another form, probably more modern techniques and technologies for the day, and obviously more for the modern needs, just as would happen these days. The gunpowder would have done little damage to Parliament. The 36 barrels of gunpowder that Fawkes planted in a cellar below the House of Parliament would have been sufficient to raze it to the ground. It says, however, some experts have claimed that the gunpowder had decayed and would have not properly exploded, even if it had been ignited. So it seems like there's a double view there. Some think it would have caused devastation, some think it wouldn't have done. It would have damaged part of it. But there we are, and it says here that the gunpowder had decayed. So perhaps it got wet or something. Just like fireworks today, if you get fireworks wet or anything beforehand, certainly they won't work properly. Not everyone celebrates Guy Fawkes Night. Dummies have been burned on bonfires since as long as the 13th century, initially to drive away evil spirits, but following the gunpowder plot, the focus of sacrifices switched to Guy Fawkes treason. Traditionally, these effigies, called guys, are called through the streets, carried through the streets in the days leading up to Guy Fawkes Day, and children and passers-by shout, penny for a guy. Penny for the guy, there we are. But at his former school in York, St. Peter's in York, they do not celebrate Guy Fawkes Night, as they refuse to burn a guy out of respect for one of their own. So they still respect Guy Fawkes. Well, there's a lot of information here. If you'd like to see more about it, telegraph.co.uk, Wikipedia as well. Have a good look at it. But if you want to go to an organised display, bang up to date now, it's on tonight. Various places will have them. It's usually all for charity. But I mean, sometimes it's thousands of pounds worth of fireworks being blown up there. Catherine wheels and everything, rockets and everything else there. Big organised displays in every town and city, football fields, recreational grounds, etc. And of course, if you don't really want to go, you can probably see them from outside your window. Like I say, it's one of the major events in the country, and certainly it's probably certainly people will have fireworks on New Year's Eve, as I say, but certainly if you want to see some fireworks tonight and on the 5th of November in general, well, with the darker evenings, might be a nice bit of bright light there to see, and do enjoy yourselves. And that's a bit of history. And if you want to read any more up about that, you're very welcome to. But still, historical occasions still taking place to this day. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye now.